there, welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, April 16th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, Edward Cabrera returned with a bang. Lots of fun rookie performances from Ben Brown, Jackson Chourio, among others, and much more. But let's start with our players of the night.
Yankees win. The Yankees win.
Now, it's weird because the Yankees did not win on Monday, but it was a very emotional day. John Sterling has retired, and he will no longer be calling Yankees games from the radio broadcast booth, but I thought I would honor my guy, John Sterling, there. But we will start with Scott. You were up. Player of the night.
All right. I'm taking the Olive Garden breadstick here with Edward Cabrera. One of the stallions, the new stallions. I tried to save the Olive Garden breadstick for Chris, but he politely refused. So I'm taking it.
And trying to cut back on carbs, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. What Edward Cabrera did here in his season debut was the sort of thing we've seen Edward Cabrera do before. Against the Giants, he struck out 10 in 6 innings, 1 earned run allowed, only 1 walk, which is nice to see. 17 swinging strikes on 91 pitches, and he really showed off the full arsenal in doing it. He had 6 of those whiffs on the changeup, 4 on the curveball, 6 on the slider, 1 on the fastball. But the fastball is not really the selling point for Edward Cabrera. He throws it very hard, but he doesn't locate it very well, and that's always been the problem for him. And it makes it hard for me to say this year's going to be any different just because he had a good start like this. You know, he was kind of the initial Charizard, right? Where he'll either destroy your enemies or he will destroy you. And he destroyed your enemies today. Probably didn't start him today, but hopefully he has more of these good starts than bad going forward. It's just, we've said that so many times in the past. I can say he threw 68% of his pitches for strikes in this one, which is great. If he can keep doing that, then Edward Cabrera is going to be awesome. His fastball was only his 3rd most used pitch, which is probably the right approach when your secondary arsenal is that good and your fastball is a problem. But I just have no reason to believe right now that he's going to continue with this because he never has before. Doesn't mean you can't pick him up. There's a lot of upside here, clearly. We just saw it on display. But it's a bit of a wild card, and it could wind up frustrating you. You like Ash Ketchum, you could wind up charred and regretful.
I will say I'm not going to rank him with, Garrett Crochet and the rest of those guys that we've talked a lot about so far this season, because they've done it for more than one start. But I will say, as with Garrett Crochet after his first start, I do think Edward Cabrera is probably someone that if you have daily fab runs right now, you should add him in any format, just in case he has figured something out. Because we saw in spring training, he was throwing strikes more often. The rehab assignment was iffy. The first couple of starts were pretty bad. I believe the last one was really, really good. Only 1 walk in that one, I think. And then in this one, he ditched the sinker. He only threw the 4-seam fastball 19% of the time, or 21% of the time. And the weird thing about Edward Cabrera has always been that his command of his 3 bendy, slow pitches has always been pretty good. And it's been the fastball that has primarily gotten him in trouble, and that he struggled to throw for strikes, and that he struggled to repeat. And so I kind of think this approach might just work for him. And like the fastballs aren't particularly great. He's really tall. He doesn't have a great approach angle, all those things. So it might just be that like treating the fastball like a secondary and treating
like a
his
changeup.
Well, and treating his
up with
kind of
more velocity.
Kind of like treating his 93-mile-an-hour changeup as his primary pitch and his 96-mile-an-hour 4-seamer as a changeup. That might actually, that kind of pitching backwards is not something you see very often, but it might be an answer for a pitcher as talented and infuriatingly inconsistent as Edward Cabrera. So while I think the likeliest outcome is his next start is 5 walks in 3 innings, there aren't, I think, a lot of pitchers who you can say, if he just fixes this one thing, he's a top 30 pitcher. And I do think that's true of Edward Cabrera. He does a great job limiting hard contact. He gets a lot of strikeouts, gets a lot of swings and misses. It's just the walks. And so I think there's a lot to be optimistic about from this start.
And he's only 40% rostered. I mean, you could swap out a Luis Heel for
I
him
would drop Max Meyer for him. I'm more excited about Edward Cabrera than I was about Max Meyer yesterday.
We should probably bring that up since we were raving about Max Meyer yesterday, is that he did get sent down to make room for Edward Cabrera. Just when you thought he was safe, the Marlins said, no, sir. Max Meyer, we need to preserve those innings. He's going to be pitching like 3 innings once a week in the minors, something like that. So reprieve for AJ Puck, if you care about him.
And Braxton Garrett his timeline's been pushed back, it looks like. So
but yeah, Edward Cabrera, highly available. You know, a lottery ticket. I'm not itching to get him in my lineup. If you miss out on him in waivers, I don't think it's the end of the world, but an interesting pitcher, as has long been true.
So you guys would make that swap. You would drop Max Meyer for Edward Cabrera.
I absolutely would. Yeah.
We're not going to see Max Meyer for a while, one would think, though life does find a way.
Yes.
I think this whole thing is so stupid. I think the fact that they made Skip Schumacher go out there, the guy who they voided the option year on his contract, so we know he's a lame duck manager. The fact that they made him go out there and say, oh yeah, he's got to work on his 2-seam fastball. You know, that's really that's so embarrassing. What a minor league organization. What a joke the Marlins are. I'm sorry. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I think the timing is definitely weird, and using his 2-seam fastball as an excuse is definitely weird. From an organizational standpoint, it kind of does make some sense because he is coming back from.
They had to limit his innings.
Yes, and they're probably going to trade some of their pitchers later this year. There are going to be injuries, so
they're not going to be playing in October.
No.
I don't think I'm being unfair when I say that the 3-15 Marlins or whatever they are not going to make the playoffs this year. Just let him throw 100 innings and then end his season. Who cares?
They could do that. They certainly could have done that, but that will not be the case for Max Meyer, who you could drop for Edward Cabrera. Who would you rather have between Edward Cabrera and my player of the night? That would be Ben Brown, who turned in his first quality start of his career. 6 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. Only had 6 swinging strikes on 84 pitches. Allowed some hard contact in this one for sure. 9 hard hits allowed, 93.1 average exit velocity. Basically a 2-pitch pitcher, but he's looked pretty good in his past 3 outings. So that first relief appearance came at the Texas Rangers. It's his first time pitching in the majors, so there could be some jitters. He's nervous. He's going up against a really tough lineup. He gave up 6 earned runs. He only recorded 5 outs. In 3 outings since then, it's 14 2/3 innings, 2 runs allowed, 4 walks to 14 strikeouts. So Ben Brown has looked much better. This is someone who has prospect pedigree, 18% rostered, widely available. Chris, who would you rather have, Cabrera or Ben Brown?
Oh, Cabrera fairly easily. Brown, I think, is kind of interesting. I wrote him up in the waiver wire column yesterday, so it was good to see him get off to a good start. But he's a 2-pitch pitcher in that he throws 2 pitches. Technically, he has thrown 3 changeups also, but it's really just the curveball that looks appealing, and it looks like a really good pitch. He's got like a 45% whiff rate with it. It's just, I don't know if that's enough.
And he throws the fastball. Like, he threw the fastball 75% of the time in this one.
Yeah.
But the bigger issue for me is Ben Brown's control was terrible at AAA last year. It was good at AA in the Southern League where they had the tacky baseballs. But then once he got to AAA, all the early season hype kind of fell apart on Ben Brown. Is there new early season hype for this year with a solid start to his major league career? I don't know. I could see it being legit, but my hunch is it's kind of phony, and it may all end suddenly because Jamison Tyon's coming back this week, and who's being removed from the rotation? It's either going to be Ben Brown or it's going to be Jordan Wicks, I guess. But I presume it would be Ben Brown over Jordan Wicks.
Yeah, I agree on that.
All right, would you guys drop either Luis Heel, who had a tough go at it here on Monday? Major control issues, 7 walks to 6 strikeouts. Still had 16 swinging strikes on 99 pitches. It was 5 innings, 3 runs. He has 14 walks through 3 starts. Still 69% rostered. And Frankie Montas, a rough outing at the Mariners, 2 innings, 5 runs allowed, 5 walks. Would you be all right dropping either Heel or Montas for Cabrera or Ben Brown?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were going to mention Montas, and I was going to add him to the list of pitchers I would drop for Edward Cabrera. Absolutely. His velocity's been down. He hasn't looked great even when the results have been okay. So, yeah, both Montas and Luis Heel, I think it's fine to drop for Edward Cabrera. If you have Michael Lorenzen and Edward Cabrera is available, go ahead and drop him as well. Yeah.
I don't know that I'd drop either Montas or Heel for Brown, mostly because I don't think Brown's long for his job. But yeah, I agree. I'd drop either one of them for Edward Cabrera.
I was just referring to Cabrera. For Brown, I don't think that's a priority. But for Cabrera, for sure.
All right, Chris, you are up. Your player of the night.
George Kirby, who looked really good after looking really, really bad in his most recent start. And I think the Mariners are listening to the podcast, because I was on the broadcast on Monday night. They were talking about how the pitching coach was telling him it's okay to throw the ball out of the strike zone. When you have 2 strikes especially, it's actually good to do. And lo and behold, George Kirby did that. He threw the ball in the strike zone only 52% of the time in this start. It was 58% in his most recent start. And look at that. He got 12 swinging strikes. He got 6 strikeouts and 6 solid innings. I remain unconvinced that George Kirby is like an elite ace. I don't know if he's going to miss enough bats, but he needed to make some changes to his approach, and that's what we saw here. And so I think that's really promising, and I'm excited to see it.
Scott, anything to add on George Kirby?
Nope.
All right, fair enough. Well, we should mention that Michael Busch has homered in 5 straight. He is the honorable mention for tonight. One more, and what do we get, Chris? That would be a 6-pack of Busch Light.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. I
didn't want to steal your joke because you said it yesterday. But...
I'll be honest. I was reading something and I wasn't listening. I'm sorry.
Well, Michael Busch has been awesome. Homered in 5 straight. He will look to break the Cubs record on Tuesday if he can homer in a 6th straight game. Let's quickly promote a few things. As you heard early on and just throughout the season, like to play some fun baseball calls up at the top as we lead into our player of the night. So if you hear an awesome call during a game, or if there's a great historical call that you would love to hear as part of our oh my goodness gracious player of the night, you could tweet it at me at roto_Frank or email frank.stampfl@paramount.com. And a reminder to subscribe to the FBT newsletter. If you haven't already, scan the QR code if you're watching on YouTube, or head to cbssports.com/newsletters. Click on that FBT logo, punch in your email address, and it's easy as that. Let's take our first break, and when we return, we'll get to the news and notes right after this.
The UEFA Europa League quarterfinals on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
Welcome back in news and notes. We had a few players randomly placed on the IL on Monday. Seiya Suzuki with a right oblique strain. Cabrera Ruiz with an illness that's retroactive to April 12th. Obviously, sucks for both of them, but especially Seiya Suzuki, who was off to a nice start. He was batting over 300. He had 3 homers. Alexander Canario was recalled from AAA, and it was Mike Tauchman who started in right field here on Monday night. Remember, oh yes, I was going to say everything we said about Max Meyer yesterday doesn't matter anymore, but we already spoke about Max Meyer. And Braxton Garrett was supposed to be back this week. We kind of mentioned that. Turns out that Braxton Garrett has experienced a, quote, dead arm period that he's dealing with. That happened after his last bullpen session, not related to his previous shoulder injury, but could prevent his debut this week. Rafael Devers returned to the lineup Monday. He missed 4 games with a lingering left shoulder issue. He actually wound up having a pretty nasty collision with Tyler O'Neill on a pop-up to short left field. Tyler O'Neill wound up needing 8 stitches above his left eye and will go through concussion protocol. So hopefully he's all right. We'll see. Maybe he gets a couple of days off, but
yeah, that was a little scary.
Yeah.
And like all 3 guys, because Rafael, I think, was at shortstop. All 3 guys were in the vicinity. Like nobody called off. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, that was not great to see.
Not that I want to add insult to injury, literally, but the Red Sox defense was a major problem last year, and it already is a major problem again this season. Framber Valdez played some light catch on Monday, his first time doing so since landing on the IL. Walker Buehler is set for another rehab start Thursday. Dave Roberts said if Buehler is able to reach 80 to 90 pitches, then he could be a candidate to return to the Dodgers rotation by next week. We also found out earlier in the day that the Dodgers are expected to recall Kyle Hurt and promote Landon Knack. So when Bobby Miller went on the IL, we were speculating yesterday who's going to come up, who's going to get that spot in the rotation. Scott, these are interesting pitchers, Kyle Hurt and Landon Knack, but if Walker Buehler is ready to go by next week, my guess is those guys won't be around for very, very long.
Yeah, that's my guess too. I'm an especially big fan of Kyle Hurt. He has a killer 2-pitch, high 90s fastball up in the zone with the rising action, and a changeup is the other pitch, and it had a better than 20% swinging strike rate in the minors, which is elite. And I'd like to see Kyle Hurt get a chance in the rotation, but I don't think he's going to this time. I mean, the Dodgers have only used him as a reliever so far. And yeah, I think Walker Buehler's eventually going to fill that opening eventually, but I mean, sooner than later.
For what it's worth, Buehler's velocity has been down a little bit in his minor league rehab assignment. The last start he made in front of the StatCast cameras was 1.4 miles per hour down on his fastball. So, wouldn't be a surprise if he wasn't quite the ace that he once was, because it is his second Tommy John surgery, but I'm still very excited to see Walker Buehler.
It sounds like everything that I've heard and read, the success rate after a second Tommy John surgery, basically a coin flip. It's
much lower, yeah.
50% whether or not you're going to return to the pitcher you once were. So we'll see what happens with Walker Buehler. Christian Yelich has missed 3 straight with that back injury. Pat Murphy said pregame that Yelich is, quote, about the same. Kodai Senga is throwing from 120 feet and should begin playing catch off a mound this week. Jordan Romano will be activated soon and will immediately regain his closer job. The strong indication is that he'll be back on Tuesday. Yohan Duran will throw another bullpen session Tuesday if all goes well. He could be cleared for live batting practice. Kyle Bradish will begin a rehab assignment at AA on Tuesday. And my guess is he'll probably use most, if not all, of that 30-day rehab window to get his arm right. Salvador Perez had an MRI that revealed a grade 1 groin strain, but he hopes to play on Tuesday.
We've seen this a few too many times from Salvador Perez over the last few years, in particular, where he tries to gut it out playing through an injury that he probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wrecked a couple of seasons, so I hope it doesn't do the same here, because he's off to a really good start. I think he's the number 2 catcher, I think, in Roto right now.
Paul Sewald will throw a second bullpen session Tuesday. Jake Berger was officially moved to the IL with a left intercostal strain. Otto Lopez was recalled and in the lineup for the Marlins. A career .301 hitter in the minors, but doesn't offer much outside of batting average. And that is Otto Lopez. Eloy Jimenez was activated Monday, but wasn't in the lineup. He hasn't played since March 31st due to a left adductor strain. JD Martinez is expected to resume his minor league rehab assignment later this week. He recently had an injection due to back tightness. Alex Cora said Monday that he plans to begin playing Wilyer Abreu every day against right-handed pitchers. He is 9% rostered. Scott, any interest in Wilyer Abreu in, let's say, 5 outfielder leagues?
Well, I like him in a broad sense, he was successful in a late season call up for the Red Sox last year. Good on base skills, good trajectory on his fly balls for maximizing power. I know he struck out a ton this spring, and that's part of the reason why, say, Don Rafaela was included on the Major League roster, I think, is they didn't feel like they could count on Wilyer Abreu to play a huge role. He struck out 12 times in 29 plate appearances. At least that was the case going into Monday's action here. So it's kind of a wait and see, I guess, is what I'm saying. I think there is potential for Wilyer Abreu, but between spring and the start of the regular season, he hasn't looked quite like himself.
Yeah, the thing that I'm interested in seeing is what this looks like when Vaughn Grissom's back, because Rafaela did play shortstop today, I think, it wasn't the first time. I think it was his first start at shortstop. And obviously Grissom was expected to be their everyday second baseman before the Trevor Story injury, but he has experience at shortstop. So does Grissom coming back create a crowded outfield? Rafaela hasn't been good himself with the bat. Or do they play Grissom at second base and keep Rafaela at shortstop? I think that's what we'd prefer to see, because I don't think any of the alternative middle infield options on the Red Sox are particularly interesting, but it could cause some playing time concerns.
What Alex Cora has said so far is that they're going to mix in a bunch of guys at shortstop, Grissom among them, Rafaela among them. But I don't think they want to commit to either of those guys at shortstop, because Rafaela's defense is too good in center field and Grissom's defense is too bad at shortstop.
Yeah.
But if none of the other options are hitting, then their hand may be forced at some point. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
Danny Jansen was activated by the Blue Jays, but was not in the lineup Monday. My guess is that him and Kirk will split catcher duties moving forward. Robert Stevenson was removed from a rehab appearance over the weekend due to right elbow soreness. J.D. Davis was placed on the IL, and Esteury Ruiz is back with the A's. He entered as a pinch hitter, and he hit a home run his first at bat. 106.8 exit velocity, 406 feet, 11 games in the minors this season, 326 batting average, 3 home runs, 7 steals, 89.4 average exit velocity, which doesn't sound great in the grand scheme. It's not, but for him, it's.
I mean, that's the thing with Esteury Ruiz is like he did hit for a little power once he got to Double-A and Triple-A, and I assume it was of the Lane Thomas, TJ Friedel variety, where he wasn't hitting him more than a few rows deep. But this was the hardest hit fly ball of Esteury Ruiz's major league career, 106.9 miles an hour, I believe. 5th hardest ball, period, for him as a major leaguer. So it was a good sign. He crushed that one. I mean, that was a legit home run.
Yeah. And they talked about how his exit velocities were up in spring training too. We don't have a lot of data to look at for that, but that's what they said. So, we're not counting on him for power anyway. It would be a nice bonus if it gets him in the lineup more often. Obviously, we'll take it. But I imagine they wouldn't bring him back up unless they had a role in mind for him. I don't know if it's going to be quite every day, but I would say in 5 outfielder roto leagues, you should plan on getting Esteury Ruiz back in your lineup.
Yeah, the thing for him is just like hit 270, hit 8 home runs, and it's going to be hard to take you out of the lineup. Like, that's how low the bar has to be. And he's a must-start fantasy player, at least in categories leagues. So we'll take any signs we can get, I think.
Yeah, Ruiz is 54% rostered on CBS. He's 51% rostered on Yahoo. And I would say any category leagues, even head-to-head categories with 3 outfielders, probably should be rostered, because he's someone that could just win you the stolen base category every single week. So, again, that is Esteury Ruiz. The White Sox signed Tommy Pham to a minor league contract. Will get $3 million if he makes it to the majors by April 25th. He is 3% rostered. Last year, hit 256 with 16 homers, 22 steals over 129 games. Chris, any interest in Tommy Pham?
Sure. I don't think he's someone you absolutely have to go out and add, and I think it's unlikely he matters much in any head-to-head points leagues with 3 outfielders. But, your deeper 15-team roto leagues, absolutely go out and add Tommy Pham. Yeah.
Would you rather speculate on him or Willie Abreu?
Tommy Pham's definitely going to play more, right?
There seems to be some doubt as to whether he'll be on the major league roster by April 25th, judging by the terms of the contract. But I would suspect so. Yeah. And the good thing about him signing with the White Sox is he's not replacing anybody we care about.
No.
Correct.
Not at all.
Nick Senzel was activated from the IL. Trey Lipscomb was optioned back to AAA. The Mariners placed Dominic Canzone on the IL with a sprained AC joint in his left shoulder. And while that is not the most fantasy relevant news, as a result, they recalled outfield prospect Jonathan Clase, who is a 21-year-old outfielder with massive speed. Last year, in 129 games, he hit .242 with 20 homers and 79 steals. He is 11% rostered. I guess this is kind of a running theme here today, Scott. Like deeper 5 outfielder leagues, there are names emerging here between Tommy Pham and Willie Abreu, Jonathan Clase. Any interest here? Massive speed.
So he was in the lineup here for the Mariners against the Reds Monday, a right-hander, he's a switch hitter. Okay. I've only seen him bat left-handed, as is often the case with switch hitters. So, yeah, we'll see how much he ends up playing for the Mariners. That'll be a big hurdle. I'm also not totally sold on the bat for Jonathan Clase. He got off to a hot start at high A last year, but at double A, where he spent the majority of last season, he hit .222 with a high strikeout rate. So, obviously AL only, you're rushing to pick him up. Deeper roto leagues, if you need steals, you're intrigued, but I don't know that Jonathan Clase is a priority pickup yet.
Let's continue on. Just want to bring up a prospect people have been asking me about. I saw he got added in my Tout Wars League, which is a 15-team mixed roto league, and that is Joey Loperfido of the Houston Astros. He was just named the PCL Player of the Week. He's 24 years old. He's off to a tremendous start, batting .333, 10 homers, 2 steals, a 1324 OPS. That does come with a 34% strikeout rate. But there is a decent amount of power and speed here. He's played all over the diamond, all 3 outfield spots, first base, second base. It's got anything here because seems to be gaining some traction, at least in some deeper leagues, and receiving some questions about Joey Loperfido.
Yeah. He's one of those players who I would have been more excited about like 5 years ago when it didn't seem like it didn't seem like the threshold for it didn't seem like the major league jump was as big of a hurdle to clear. I mean, Loperfido seems to have some power, some speed, some on-base skills, but he strikes out a lot. And I don't have the exit velocity data in front of me, but I don't recall him impacting the ball especially hard. I'll have to double check that because I could just be completely wrong about that. But I don't even think he's going to get the kind of playing time right away that would.
His average exit velocity last year was 87 miles per hour. His max was 107.6. He does pull the ball in the air a lot, but there's some swing and miss in the game as well. So yeah, it's a profile that has worked. Like I could see a Lane Thomas like outcome.
It could work, but it's since the end of the juice ball era, it's the kind of profile I've learned to bet against. So, a lot of prospect people will just look at the minor league numbers and say, hey, Loperfido, big deal. Look at those home runs. Look at those steals. I'm a skeptic. If there was a clearer path to regular playing time, maybe I'd feel differently. But to me, this is kind of reminiscent of not Ian Kinsler. Ian Kinsler was amazing. It's kind of reminiscent of Justin Foscue getting called up.
We'll just point out the exit velocity this year at AAA, 95.8 miles per hour. The max is 113.9.
Whoa,
yeah,
that's a big improvement.
Jump, yeah.
That does change
Holy
things.
cow.
And he's raised the launch angle. He's hitting a lot more fly balls this season. Again, this is Joey Loperfido. We're talking
so he already had 10 home runs in 14 games.
If he could play all three outfield positions,
Gosh.
I think there's a chance he can get a shot with the Astros.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like a total jerk for saying
No, I
everything I just said.
I would say
That's a lot. That seems transformative. I don't know what's gotten into him, but
that's a massive change. And if it sticks, that's impressive. But I also don't think he's someone that even in like a 15-team league, you need to run out and add. It's not like, I mean, he might get called up tomorrow. I don't know, but
I don't know.
All right.
If
Well,
he doesn't, I gotta bat him in the prospects report this week.
I was just gonna say, keep an eye out for Scott's prospect report. Maybe, just maybe, Joey Loperfido will find his way into that article this week. Let's just continue on with prospects and rookies. And we had some really fun rookie versus rookie action on Monday. Jackson Merrill versus Jackson Chourio. Both had pretty big games here. Jackson Merrill, 3 for 5 with 2 RBI. That's back-to-back 3-hit games for him. He is batting .356 early on in the season. 1 homer, 3 steals, and .874 OPS. The plate discipline looks great. It's 8 walks to 11 strikeouts. He's hitting the ball decently hard so far. The expected numbers look great according to StatCast. What stands out to me early on, Chris, is the ISO. It's a .085 ISO, and looking at the batted ball distribution for Jackson Merrill, lots of line drives to center field. And I remember many of our conversations the past couple of years is hitting to those power alleys, the gaps. It hasn't been the best for power the past couple of seasons. So while I love what I've seen from Jackson Merrill, I just kind of wonder if that's his approach. Maybe the power upside is kind of limited, which I think is what we were expecting anyway with Jackson Merrill.
Yeah, that shouldn't be surprising. Even like the optimistic projections, I think we're hoping for 15 homers and, maybe 15 to 20 stolen bases. And the case for drafting him was less the most likely outcome and more what if he's just one of those guys. And right now he looks really good, if not necessarily a guy who's an impact fantasy player right away as a 20-year-old, but it's worth keeping in mind he is 20 and is going to continue to grow and may not be a great fantasy option this season, but he is more than keeping his head above water right now. 314 expected batting average shows that it's not just a fluke. He's hitting the ball pretty hard, pretty consistently. So, I mean, it's not a difference-making fantasy profile yet, but he's not someone that I'm worried about having in my lineup either.
Well, if Jackson Merrill's hitting the ball that hard, like, couldn't the home runs just start coming? I mean, if
I think
he's hitting the ball hard enough to hit home runs, and just because he hasn't,
he would have to.
Yeah, and that's what he started doing a little more once he got to AA last year.
Yeah, but I guess it's just, it wouldn't be surprising if it started happening in May or June. Like, it doesn't have to be next year necessarily.
Sure.
And I think with the stolen base contributions, with the potential for batting average, you can't really put Jackson Merrill among your top 15 shortstops yet, or I guess outfield is the position where you'd be more likely to start him. You can't put him among your top 30 outfielders yet, but he's not far enough out of that group to, I might still give him preferential treatment for the upside among players outside of that group.
And again, it's incredibly impressive, the fact that he has this level of plate discipline right away, and he's hitting as many line drives as he is. So I didn't want to downplay the start that he's off to, because it's been a great start for Jackson Merrill. It's also been a great start for Jackson Chourio, who went 2 for 4 with a sock and a shoe. His 3rd home run, his 3rd steal of the season. He had 4 hard hits in this game. He's batting .259 early on, 749 OPS. The plate discipline is lacking. I think to some extent we were expecting that coming into the season. StatCast tells us, Scott, Jackson Chourio might be a sell high. Now, I don't want to go too crazy with that, because he's a rookie prospect with amazing pedigree, and it might just turn out that he's one of these players that can outperform what StatCast is telling us. But for the sake of transparency, entering Monday, his expected batting average was 179 and his expected slug was 295. Do either of those things matter to you when it comes to Jackson Chourio?
Oh, it's making me nervous. I'm highly invested in Jackson Chourio, and yeah, I mean the 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases. You can't complain about that. But the home run he hit today was hit only 97.2 miles per hour. It bounced over the left field fence. You know, the shallower part of the left field fence. It was not an impressive home run, and you give the overall exit velocity readings there for Jackson Chourio, 5th percentile for average exit velocity. And that's curious to me because normally when you get a prospect as hyped as he is at age 17, I mean, people were calling him a top 5 overall prospect at a very young age. Before he had even really started putting up numbers in the minors, it was like, this guy is can't miss, top of the scales prospect. And so you'd think the one thing you could count on him to do is hit the ball hard. Now, he wasn't at a level in the minors last year where he could get any kind of exit velocity readings, so I had nothing to refer to. But certainly the production was there and the hype was extreme. And I thought if Jackson Chourio struggled with anything, it would be making consistent enough contact, not the quality of the contact. And it's worth noting, like, maybe he's just not squaring up the ball yet. Like, he may be having trouble making contact.
Raw power versus game power.
Yeah, you could put it that way. Sure. Like, just not, your timing could be bad and it doesn't necessarily translate to a whiff. It just translates to a poorly struck baseball. But it's making me nervous. And it was unexpected that this would be the thing I would be nervous about for Chourio.
I think I'm still going with a glass half full approach to Chourio. I know that previous years he would get off to slow starts when being moved up to a new level, and then he would adjust, and he obviously would be much better after that. I think the fact that the overall numbers are still as good as they are, and he still kind of hasn't figured it out yet, at least based on some of these underlying numbers, I find that pretty encouraging, right? Like,
but should the numbers be as good as they are? I mean, you talked about the expected numbers, the expected stats. They're about as bad as it gets.
That is
so
true.
I'm not disagreeing with what you just said. I talked about it last week with any of these high profile rookies. Just look at Gunnar Henderson last year. Just look at Bobby Witt and Julio Rodriguez the year before. They struggled for about a third of the season. They were killing your fantasy team, and then they took off and ended up with huge numbers. And it could go that way for Jackson Chourio. But I don't know. I mean, I sell high. I get it depends how high we're talking.
That's the thing. It depends on what you can get.
The fact that his actual numbers look as good as they do right now. I thought he was being underdrafted at 100 overall. So what would it take for me to move him? Would I trade him for like Tristan Casas? Sure, but Tristan Casas was being drafted ahead of him, right? So I don't even know that
I don't think I would.
You could pull off.
I don't think I would do that in a categories league, though.
You would have on draft day.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, Tristan Casas got up to around like pick 75, 80, and I feel
higher
like
than Chourio.
Based on ADP, yes, but didn't you have Chourio in like the 80 range of your overall range?
I never drafted him in the 80 range.
Would you trade him for Cody Bellinger?
Yeah, I would.
I think so.
I mean, Cody Bellinger's underlying numbers look almost exactly the same as last year. So maybe last year was totally phony. That was some of the arguments people were making, but I don't know. It's easier for me to just say, slow start for Cody Bellinger. Like,
would you trade him for O'Neal Cruz?
Chourio for O'Neal Cruz? Not with O'Neal Cruz.
I think I would, yeah.
He's striking out about 40% of the time right now. Yeah, it's been rough.
Oh, I was thinking Tyler O'Neill. I had the wrong O'Neill. Yes, I would trade Jackson Chourio for O'Neal Cruz.
Would you trade him for Jazz Chisholm? Or Nolan Jones?
I was going to say Nolan Jones.
I would
do all of those. Yeah.
these are choices I would have made all along.
Right. No,
So,
but that's what I'm saying. I think
buy low
that's what you have to aim for
is a buy low
with Chourio. Well, I just think you have to sell high. You have to get I think
right. You have to sell high
because I don't want to give up on the talent, because I don't want to give up on the skill set, even though it hasn't been good so far. And I think all of that is correct. The fact that the quality of contact is as bad as it is especially bad, seeing as he's striking out 28% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to trade a player with that kind of upside, I'm going to have to take advantage of the fact that the surface level numbers are very, very good and trade him for a player who I think has similar upside. I think Nolan Jones and Jazz Chisholm and all these guys we're talking about have similar upside and have proven they can play at that level, at the major league level. That's, I think, the way you have to look at it for him.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement. Let's take our final break. When we return, I've got a few other waiver wire pitchers. We'll talk about those right after this.
Out there are two colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is the PDR on CBS Sports Network.
We had ourselves a little pitcher's duel out in Detroit. Michael Lorenzen in his debut up against Reese Olson. Michael Lorenzen, 5 shutout innings, 5 walks to 4 strikeouts. Maybe I kind of stretched the definition of pitcher's duel here, but he was all right in his debut at the Tigers. Reese Olson, much more impressive on the other side, up against the Texas Rangers, 6 1/3 innings, 1 run allowed, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts, 16 swinging strikes on 95 pitches, 10 of those on the changeup, 5 on the slider, 1 on the curve. He is 53% rostered. Chris, how would you rank all 4 of the waiver wire names we've talked about today? Reese Olson, Lorenzen is only 28% rostered. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you just don't really care about adding him. Ben Brown and Edward Cabrera. How do you rank those 4?
I think it's Cabrera at the top, clearly. Then I'd go Reese Olson. Then there's a gap. And then I'd probably go Ben Brown ahead of Michael Lorenzen, just because I think Michael Lorenzen is pretty replaceable and Ben Brown maybe isn't. But I think Ben Brown is, one, pretty replaceable and also likely to be replaced in his own rotation. So, yeah.
Realistically, the only 2 I want to add, if it's not like a desperation situation, are Olson and Cabrera. And I think I'd actually prefer Reese Olson over Cabrera. The fact Olson did this against the Rangers after getting crushed by the Pirates last time, A, is frustrating, but B, is reassuring, because Reese Olson looked pretty bankable going into that Pirate start last time. That's why I had him as the top sleeper pitcher for that week. It really blew up in my face. But he was great down the stretch for the Tigers last year. In September, Reese Olson had a 1.44 ERA. And a big reason why is he started featuring his changeup more. His slider was a great pitch for him from the beginning, like a 40% whiff rate, but he started mixing in this changeup more in September, had the 1.44 ERA. And the one thing, the thing that his 2 good starts this year have had in common is high changeup usage. He kind of went away from it in that second start against the Pirates and got crushed. So to see him get back to featuring that changeup prominently, 29% of the time, it was responsible for 10 of his 16 whiffs. And the fact it was against the Rangers lineup, I'm going to try to treat the blip for Olson as a blip, because that's what it seems to be with him bouncing back with these results. And I feel pretty good about him.
I do think it's a bit of an upside versus floor thing, where I feel like Reese Olson's, I feel better about starting him in his next start, but I don't think he has the same upside Cabrera does. Maybe I'm underrating Reese Olson. I know the changeup and slider are both pretty good pitches for him, but I can't see a path to a top 30 finish for him. I can see it for Cabrera.
I think they both have considerable upside, but I would probably agree that I think Cabrera's is probably higher. Cabrera's floor is also lower. So.
Yes,
I think of
absolutely.
all the Tigers pitchers, Reese Olson has the 3rd most upside after Tarek Skubal, obviously, and Jack Flaherty. I don't think I'm forgetting anyone there. I think Olson's the third most interesting.
I could put him ahead of Flaherty pretty easily. I just think Cabrera has higher upside than both of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Would you guys be all right dropping Heel or Montas for Reese Olson?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, let's slide over to some waiver wire hitters. What does Jordan Westburg have to do to get Scott White to buy in outside of being traded away from the Orioles? Because that's what it might take. 3 for 4 with a double, 2 RBI, just keeps hitting. Had 4 hard hits in this game, 302 batting average, 3 homers, 10 runs, 12 RBI, 2 steals, a 920 OPS early on. Not striking out very much. It's an 18% strikeout rate, 93.1 average exit velocity. He's 64% rostered. Scott, what does Jordan Westburg have to do?
Well, I felt like a fraud because after our podcast yesterday, I realized I wanted to upgrade at second base in the podcast listeners league. That's the 12-team head-to-head points league. So on the shallower end of the spectrum. My second baseman was Jorge Polanco because I drafted Matt McClain for second base. Obviously, that's not happening. Jorge Polanco off to a terrible start. Actually had a good game here Monday, but we're getting sidetracked. I picked up Jordan Westburg. I just picked up Jordan Westburg and dropped Jorge Polanco, so I'm now starting him in one of my shallower leagues at second base. So there must be a level of comfort I have with him there. And so I think it's probably, as always, it has to be framed properly, right? I tend to think of prospects who are as highly regarded as Westburg. What do they have to do to be successful? Like, what do they have to do to be majorly successful in fantasy? And I think in terms of, well, they have to be must start in all formats. And I think Westburg is going to struggle to become must start in all formats as a right-handed hitter playing in one of the worst power venues for right-handed hitters, Camden Yards. But I don't have a problem with him being 64% rostered. I think he could be useful, particularly if he's going to make some kind of contribution in steals, be a double-digit base stealer. If he hits 15 to 20 home runs with 12 to 15 steals, it's going to be a pretty useful player. But I don't see him hitting 30 home runs.
Yeah, I
being
can
a top 10 second baseman.
I can see him not being a must-start guy in a 12-team head-to-head points league because that's a pretty shallow format. The bar is pretty high. That being said, I do think, given the caliber of prospect he was, given like what does Jordan Westburg need to do to be a must-start player? 93 mile per hour average exit velocity would probably do it. Right? Like if he could sustain that, I think it's probably going to work out because as good as Ryan Mountcastle's quality of contact metrics have been, they've never been that good. And so I don't expect Westburg to sustain that level of production. But given that he's currently doing it, given that he has the prospect pedigree, I do think it's probably like someone in every 12-team points league probably has a player with less upside than Jordan Westburg on their roster, and they should go add him just in case this is what it looks like when he figures it out, right? Like it's very fitting that on Sunday night, Colton Cowser was the Orioles prospect or young player that everybody was beating down the door for and dropping $300 in fab and all that, because Jordan Westburg's kind of just been lost in the shuffle a little bit among Orioles prospects for like 3 years now. But I think he absolutely deserves to be rostered everywhere just in case this is him figuring it out.
What about Mitch Haniger, who had a nice game here, 2 for 3 with his third home run. He's batting .286. He's got 11 RBI and .875 OPS. He is 41% rostered. And I brought up 4 outfielders yesterday as waiver wire ads: Lars Nootbaar, Sal Frelick, Brenton Doyle, Dalton Varsho. Would you take Mitch Haniger over any or all of those names?
So I prefer Frelick, and what was the first one you said?
Nootbaar.
Yeah, I prefer Frelick and Nootbaar to him. But it's probably a close call between Varsho and Haniger, who's my third favorite on that list. I did have Haniger as a sleeper hitter for this week, so we're off to a good start with that call. Obviously, he's not going to provide speed like Varsho will. I suspect he'll provide more home runs. So it kind of depends on what you need there. I guess Varsho may be a safer bet to stay healthy. So I'll go ahead and put Haniger slightly behind Varsho if all category needs are equal. But they're in a similar range of the outfield rankings for me.
I think it comes down to category need.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Two of the most added outfielders right now, right around 50% rostered. So similar range to Mitch Haniger. Brandon Marsh and Connor Joe.
I'd much rather have Mitch Haniger than either of those guys. It's not even close.
Especially Connor Joe. Let Connor Joe go.
No, Scott, come on, man. Like, do we really want to start the week like this?
We do.
Conrad Joe.
All right, let's talk about Ryan Jeffers. He continues his solid start, 3 for 4 with 2 doubles and 2 RBI. He had 3 hard hits in this game. Again, he's just off to a solid start. He's 28% rostered. That number is probably right, I think, right? That probably accounts for at least all the 2 catcher leagues. Ryan Jeffers?
It's probably most 2 catcher leagues, but yeah, it feels a little low.
Okay. Because I don't
playing.
Oh,
The issue with him is how much he would play.
Robot Scott.
Domo arigato, Mr. Scotto.
Am I back?
I think so. Scott's so annoyed.
He hasn't even been playing as much as I thought. Wait, a couple appearances at DH, whatever. Yeah, Ryan Jeffers is like a top 20 catcher. So if top 20 catcher matters in your league, Jeffers matters in your league.
Agreed.
What about Ryan O'Hearn, who went 2 for 5 with his 3rd home run, back-to-back games with multiple hits and a home run in each? He had 4 hard hits in this game. We want more Orioles prospects, but Ryan O'Hearn just won't go away. Does that mean he should be added in deeper leagues?
In deeper leagues?
Yeah, like 13% rostered. It feels a little low, but he's not really an everyday player. We kind of know what he is. He hits for power. I don't know. It's fine. I think he can be added, but it's not.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you're missing out on a ton if you don't add Ryan O'Hearn.
He's fringy. I would call him fringy in leagues where like 350 players are rostered, like a 12-team roto league. But you get in anything deeper than that, O'Hearn should be rostered. And so 13% sounds a little low to me.
Buy low or heck no? Joe Musgrove turned in his 2nd quality start of the season. 6 innings, 3 runs allowed, more walks than strikeouts. That's 4 walks, 3 Ks in this one. Only 6 swinging strikes on 94 pitches. I've had some people ask me what's going on with Joe Musgrove. As far as I could see, the fastball is down 1 mile per hour compared to last year. The main problems have been walks and hard contact. And both were issues again in this start with the 4 walks, 9 hard hits allowed in this game. I will point out that the first 5 starts of last season, Joe Musgrove had a 6.75 ERA and a 1.58 whip. He was awesome from that point forward. Chris, buy low or heck no? Joe Musgrove.
Yeah, I think you can buy low on Joe Musgrove. He's got a long enough track record of being I'd say good, not great pitcher, but a good pitcher for a relatively long time that I'm not willing to write him off after 4 bad starts. But that being said, I guess it's 5 bad starts now.
Yeah, same length as his bad start to last year.
But Scott said this on Twitter, and I'll just kind of echo that. He did miss time at the end of last season with a shoulder injury. It did sound like he could have come back if they had something to play for, and they just opted to play it safe and not have him rush back. So, it didn't seem like it was too serious of an injury, but that lingers in the mind and could explain why, even though the velocity is mostly there, he hasn't been quite as sharp. But yeah. I tend to just give him the benefit of the doubt that he'll figure it out. He's not an ace, but if someone views him as an outside the top 40 starting pitcher, then I think you can go out and buy him.
He's not far from being an ace. His numbers last year, the reason we keep bringing up the slow start is because a couple months later, he didn't even get a full season to correct his numbers. He only got a couple months because then the shoulder injury kicked in. And it only took a couple months to get Joe Musgrove's ERA back in the low threes, his whip to back barely over 1. Like, he's not an ace, but he's been an underdog his whole career, and he's figured out how to make himself that good. And I think it might be a little bit of an Aaron Nola thing where if he's missing a little, he tends to get hit harder. But we've seen him right that often enough that I would call Joe. Like, I just have an underlying faith in Joe Musgrove, and I'd consider him a buy low for that reason.
We had some rookie pitchers on the mound here on Monday night. And do any of these pitchers matter for fantasy? Nick Nastrini had a successful Major League debut up against the Royals. 5 innings, 2 runs allowed, 5 strikeouts with 11 swinging strikes on 74 pitches. Darius Vines was solid at the Astros, 4 2/3 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts in that one. Spencer Arrighetti bounced back with a solid effort against the Braves, 4 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts with 15 swinging strikes on 87 pitches. That's pretty damn good mark for him. And Mitchell Parker. Be honest, I didn't know who that was before this start, but he made his debut for the Nationals. He was at the Dodgers. Pretty rough spot to be in. And he pitched well. 5 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts to 0 walks. Scott, do any of these names matter? Mitchell Parker, Arrighetti, Darius Vines, Nick Nastrini.
So I have notes on all of them, but I just don't think we have time to get into it that much. Probably not. They probably don't matter. Nick Nastrini has the best chance of mattering because the White Sox need all the help they can get. And I think he's the highest end prospect of the group too. So I was impressed by him having a good 3-pitch mix right away. His curveball's supposed to be good too, and he hardly threw it. He threw like 2 of them. So he may have held something back, but 11 whiffs on 74 pitches, including 3+ on 3 different pitches. I'm intrigued. Not enough to go pick up Nick Nastrini, but of these 4, I would say he has the best chance of mattering for fantasy.
8% rostered is Nick Nastrini. Just a name to watch here early on in the season. Some leftovers. We'll start with the pitchers. Part 1. Cutter Crawford continues to pitch well, this time up against the Guardians. 5 2/3 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts to 0 walks. Aaron Nola had his best start of the season up against the Rockies. 7 1/3 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts, 12 swinging strikes, all of which came on the curveball. Kyle Harrison turned in a quality start at the Marlins. It was 6 innings, 3 runs, 1 walk to 2 strikeouts. And Zach Eflin had another bounce back, this time up against the Angels. 6 1/3 shutout innings, 5 strikeouts to 0 walks. Chris, anything to add on Eflin, Harrison, Nola, and Cutter Crawford?
Good to see Nola and Eflin pitching well. Nola got the Rockies on the road, so don't expect 9 strikeouts and 7 innings every time out, but good to see because he's struggled even with good matchups at times the last couple of seasons.
And the velo was back. He had some cold weather starts early on, but the velo was back to normal in this, and the results were back to normal. So,
but the 2 I want to focus on are Cutter Crawford and Kyle Harrison, in sort of opposite directions for me. I don't know where are you guys at on Kyle Harrison? I've been pretty underwhelmed by what he's produced so far.
It's so weird that he was like a 14K per 9 guy from the beginning in the minors, and he gets to the majors and it looks like he doesn't have anything but a fastball. And
it doesn't get any whiffs.
Yeah, it's a problem. I'm treating him as pretty fringy. I'd be willing to drop Kyle Harrison for Edward Cabrera.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought about dropping that one, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go that far. So I'm happy
like a 12-teamer where you can sell out harder for upside. It might be harder to do in a 15-teamer, but I imagine Cabrera's already rostered there anyway.
Nah, I'm in agreement. I've been kind of underwhelmed with Kyle Harrison, and it looked like that slurve breaking pitch was supposed to be his best secondary, and he's not even throwing it anymore. So it's a weird start.
It's weird because he's so fastball heavy, and then you go over to the Red Sox side with Cutter Crawford. Andrew Bailey is the Red Sox pitching coach. He was the Giants pitching coach last season, and I believe the Giants in the StatCast era had the lowest fastball usage of any team last year during the StatCast era, and now the Red Sox are even lower. And what was interesting about Cutter Crawford in this one was he didn't have the feel for his sweeper at all. It didn't seem like. I think he only threw it 9 times. It had been his most used pitch coming into this start. He had thrown it 35% of the time. That was a relatively new pitch for him. He's really been featuring it. He didn't have it, and it was still a pretty good start because he's got other pitches to fall back on. He's got that cutter with a K, obviously. He threw the four-seam fastball a little more, 29% in this one. Didn't get a lot of whiffs. I think if he doesn't have the sweeper, that might be a problem. But the fact that he was able to, keep the damage off the board, limit hard contact, limit walks, I think is a really good sign on a day when he clearly didn't have his best stuff.
Cutter Crawford has allowed 6 hits in 15 1/3 innings this year.
I'm going to guess that pace will go up.
Yeah, that won't remain, but
It has to, yes, but I think it's indicative of something.
Mm-hmm.
Something good.
Yeah. No, I don't know quite how high I want to rank him because I start to move him up into like the 60 to 50 range, and I start to bump up against where I have Yusei Kikuchi and Jack Flaherty, and I don't know if I like him more than those guys, but I think there's a lot to like about Cutter Crawford so far.
I think that's a good range, though, Chris. I think he's clearly behind the early season breakout names that we've talked a lot about, the Detmers, the Jared Jones, the Garrett Crochet types. But I think the SP 50-60 range is probably the right spot for Cutter Crawford right now. Pitching standouts part 2, Chris Bassett has turned in back-to-back quality starts. This one up against the Yankees, 6 1/3, 1 run allowed, 5 strikeouts. Seth Lugo is now 4 for 4 in quality starts. He was at the White Sox where he threw 7 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts. Sonny Gray looked great at the Oakland A's, 6 shutout with 6 strikeouts to 0 walks. He only needed 72 pitches to get through 6 innings, so very efficient there for Sonny Gray. And Tyler Glasnow, come on, man. Like, last time out, 14 strikeouts. This time, 6 earned runs allowed over 5 innings. To the Nats.
Nats. Come on, man.
That's baseball. Anything to add here, Scotty? Glasnow, Sonny Gray, Lugo, and
baseball Susan. Pretty soon people aren't going to understand that reference. Because John Sterling retired. Okay. Do I have anything interesting to say about any of these guys? I don't think so. Do you have anything interesting to say, Chris? Because I don't.
I don't want to say it's an uninteresting group. I think there are a couple of uninteresting but pretty good pitchers here. Like, yeah, I think Tyler Glasnow, baseball is a funny sport, and these things happen sometimes. Lugo doesn't belong in this group is my takeaway. Like, he did yesterday. His results were good, but I think he's in that 60-ish, 70-ish range. He's fine to have on your roster. If you see Edward Cabrera on your wire, totally fine dropping Seth Lugo for Edward Cabrera. I think he's that kind of pitcher.
And his whiff rate has been way down this year. I know he's had success, so I've kind of just let it go. But I could see Seth Lugo becoming a problem for Seth Lugo eventually.
I did want to mention just with Chris Bassett, his velocity was up in the start. Sinker velo was up 1.2 miles per hour. Not that Bassett is ever a big velo guy, but I don't know if he's averaging 93 in his starts, then maybe he could be a little bit better than he has been. But yeah, just something to watch with him. Some hitting leftover.
Here's an interesting thing. Chris Bassett is throwing 8 pitches.
Yes. Yeah, 8 different pitches between 4% and 31%.
It's just throwing the whole kitchen.
The whole kitchen. Hitting leftover, Cedric Mullins is quietly off to a nice start. 1 for 3 with his 4th home run. He added 3 RBI. Also had an amazing diving catch in center field. Mike Trout, stay hot. 2 for 5 with his 7th home run.
Did you see this home run?
He just golfed it.
It might have been my favorite home run of the season because it wasn't even like the pitcher didn't even look back. It was like as soon as it left his hand, he knew it was gone. He didn't even need to see the swing. I don't think I've ever seen a pitcher not react to a home run the way that it's incredible. The no sell was amazing.
Taylor Ward also stay hot, man. I mean, I don't want to say the Angels will have a good lineup, but I mean, their top, I guess, 3 or 4 could be okay. Taylor Ward, 2 for 5 with his 6th home run. He's batting .313 with 19 RBI early on. And Vinny P.
Baby.
Vinny Pasquantino, 2 for 3 with his 3rd home run in 6 games since Chris and I put Vinny P on the worryometer. 10 hits, 3 homers, 10 RBI. You're welcome. Let's wrap up with some.
And wait. The most encouraging thing about this performance Monday for Vinny P, the 2 hardest hit balls of the game, both over 108 miles per hour. I've never felt more confident that Vinny P is back.
Very nice. Let's wrap up with some bullpen breakdowns. And for the Rangers, Jose Leclerc entered in the 6th with a 1-run lead. He pitched 2 scoreless innings with 2 strikeouts. David Robertson pitched a clean 8th, and it was Kirby Yates who pitched a clean 9th for his first save. He is 21% rostered. I have a tough time figuring out how this is going to play out, because if Kirby Yates pitches well in the role, I don't know that we could assume that Leclerc is just going to get this job back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I mean, I'm going to have a bullpen report out on Tuesday, and I am putting Jose Leclerc first in the pecking order for rostering in fantasy over Kirby Yates. But it's a narrow margin at this point. The only reason I'm doing it is because from everything I've seen, Bochy has indicated it's just a temporary move for Leclerc to get him right. And he's done well. He had 2 scoreless innings in this game since the move. So I'm expecting him to switch back to Leclerc sooner than later, but it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't, because is Leclerc really that much better than Kirby Yates? I don't think so.
I think it would have to happen soon for the sake of Leclerc, because the further we get into the Kirby Yates experience, if he converts, I don't know, let's just say 5 saves in a row, why would they go away from him, right? So it doesn't make sense. For the Orioles, Craig Kimbrell struck out 2 for his 4th save. For the Phillies, Jose Alvarado entered in, you guessed it, the 8th inning with a runner on first and a 1-run lead. He got Charlie Blackmon to ground into a double play. Jeff Hoffman got the 9th inning with the game tied. He gave up a double and a walk, but got out of it. The Phillies would win that game in extras. For the Giants, Camilo Doval recorded the final 4 outs for his 2nd save. For the Blue Jays, 2 games in a row that Chad Green pitched in the 8th with Yimi Garcia in the 9th, and Garcia picked up his 2nd save. It sounds like Jordan Romano could be back as soon as Tuesday. For the Mets, Edwin Diaz picked up his 4th save. For the Royals, James MacArthur struck out 2 for his 3rd save. Chris, who would you rather have, MacArthur or Kirby Yates?
MacArthur.
I think
because he has less competition, seemingly.
For the Padres, Robert Suarez entered with 2 outs and 2 runners on in the 9th with a 4-run lead. He gave up a single, but then got Sal Frelick to fly out for his 6th save, which is tied for the league lead. For the Astros, just kind of a weird using your closer when you're down in the game. And Josh Hader just imploded. He allowed 4 earned runs. He only, on a walk and 4 hits, I think he only recorded 1 or 2 outs. His ERA is very high, but I don't really see anything to be worried about.
So remember in 2021 when we had some concerns about Josh Hader, it was mostly non-save situations. So I think it's probably just weird stuff like that, and he'll be fine moving forward.
For the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley struck out 2 for his 6th save. That is tied for the league lead as well. For the D-backs, Kevin Ginkel got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a run, so he took the blown save there. Eventually, the Cubs would win in extras. And for the Nationals, Kyle Finnegan closed out the Dodgers for the save in that game. To stream or not to stream on Tuesday. And yes, I excluded some of the options because they are like Kikuchi and whoever else we were excited about. They're just rostered in too many leagues now. Ranger Suarez, I think it was.
Good.
Nah. Well, we didn't even feel that strongly about Kikuchi this week.
John Gray against Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Whitlock versus Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know Wade Miley has not had a good start. There we go. Wade Miley has not had a good start, right? His ERA is super high from what I remember.
No, he's made one start and it was fine. It was like
Okay,
4
because he has like a 3.30 ERA over the last 3 seasons. It's nobody cares, but he's usually pretty good. So I think Wade Miley's a fine streamer.
I might take Lance Lynn against Oakland over Wade Miley, but
Sure, that's fine.
those two are interchangeable.
I'd rather not take either.
You are why nobody cares.
On Wednesday, I think Luis Severino up against the Pirates. Let's say
I'm going to be there, so hopefully it's good.
Are we going to this game together, Chris? Is that happening?
Oh, are you going?
I don't know. I was thinking about going,
I'll see you there.
but I think it's supposed to rain now on Wednesday.
Yeah, I did see that.
So I don't know. We'll see. But Severino against the Pirates, I think is okay. Matt's at the A's. Blackmurder against the Cardinals.
Keen win against the Marlins, I think is probably fine. Miami's really bad. They're missing Josh Berger, and Keen Win did some interesting things in his last start. His splitter was really good. So
Even
I'd take Tyler Wells over all these guys you're naming.
Wells has been bad, man.
And actually, I think the Wednesday streamers are okay. Andrew Abbott at Seattle, I could see being good. That's a very good park.
Yeah.
I was unimpressed by his most recent start, despite good results, but I could see that being okay. And Zach Littell against the Angels, I think, can be pretty good.
Who are the 3 favorites? Scott, who are your 3?
Severino, Tyler Wells, and at Andrew Abbott.
Okay. I would go Severino, Abbott, and Steven Matz at the Oakland A's. One of these weeks, I do want to do Team Name Tuesday. So if you have fun, creative team names, send them in. Email fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. We'll get to it on a future episode, but here we are. We're running long. It's early in the season. There's lots to talk about. We're going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.